I had the experience of having come out in the mid-1990s and in East Texas. And I had a lot of interesting experiences, some of which I have shared with the congregation before. But I wanted to emphasize that in the 30-ish years I've been out as a queer, something other than straight person, I have always observed that the people in general who fear the queer community tend not to at least realize that they know the queer community. And the best way to get them over their fear is for them to realize they know someone. And so I really appreciate the 4 guest panelists who have agreed to let us get to know them better today. They're all going to take a short opportunity to introduce themselves today, and then when we get to our typical congregational response, you are welcome to ask questions about their queer experience. And of course, I made sure everybody knows that they're not required to answer any question that makes them uncomfortable. But thus far, I'd say we have a pretty open group that is willing to share. If I could please ask our 4 panelists to come up. We have Angie, Brendan, Rachel, and Ahmad are all here today. And do you just want to go in the order you're sitting in? This was a trick question for Angie.
Well, hi everyone. I'm Angie Kowalczyk. Some of you may recognize me. I've been here for years. I don't come regularly, but I'm happy to be here. And I've actually been here for a Pride service before with my coming out story, but I have, I guess, a little twist on it for you guys today. But so I came out probably about 30 years ago when I was 19, and I mean, it was not a great occasion. I mean, it was, the 90s, and my parents weren't happy about it, but we all grew and we came around, and we're at a much better place now. But at the time you think that's like your big coming out and that's it, you did it, but you find that you come out like a lot of times in a lot of different ways over the years. And when I first came out, I presented more masculine, kind of like I am now, but I had short hair and like men's clothes, but that felt like really natural to me, and that just seemed like part of my being authentic and recognizing myself. But it wasn't well received at that time, and I faced a lot of different comments, and my family had a really hard time with it. And I mean, it was all kind of wrapped up in me coming out as well, but I don't know, subtle kind of persistent feedback that I was too much or not enough of something. Just kind of over time, I just tend to pull back and kind of wanted to blend a little more and pass. So I found myself kind of shifting and settling into a more feminine presentation and kind of passed a little more. And that shift was reinforced by a relationship with somebody who also was struggling with just not passing. Like, it was always just easier to pass and not face any conflict, so it was all just kind of part of just making our lives easier. And then also around that time I got my first professional career, and kind of hearing people over talk in the office just kind of made you feel like it was safer to just blend in, and just it was a small workplace, and I just started to pull away from who I felt authentically to blend in a little better. And over time you just forget you're making those small changes, and I just started to kind of disconnect from what felt more authentically myself. And then I became a mom, and then you definitely shift your attention away from yourself and just kind of disconnected from that part of me, and kind of buried it enough where I didn't even really feel like I was being unauthentic. But a few years ago my relationship ended, and that it was a 20-year relationship, so that really makes you just kind of I don't know, soul search, I guess, and just think about yourself and what you want, and you know, making new friends, and you know, all these things that really kind of make you self-reflect a bit. And I felt drawn to kind of explore. I was just feeling like I want to just present. I guess I didn't really think I want to present more masculine. I just, first of all, just like, oh, I feel more comfortable in these clothes, or the haircut was the big switch. Like, I don't know, that really freed me after I finally, like, I was really scared to do it. I kept going to my hairdresser and saying I'm going to do it, and then chickening out. And but yeah, I finally did it, and that was just like a really big shift for me, just really embracing what felt authentically me. I'm really actually surprised by how I was able to let myself just become so unaware of my unauthenticity. But it was also, I think another thing that helped me kind of open up to it is I have a trans son, and he recently came out, and kind of, I guess, watching him just be his authentic self, and you know, kind of his clarity and self-trust showed me that, and just kind of awakened me to that, recognizing that I was not being authentic myself. And I don't think any of this stuff was really obvious to me at the time. It's just kind of reflecting back, I'm realizing that there was a lot of things that kind of came together that made me realize I just wasn't being myself, my authentic self. So embracing my masculinity again was almost kind of like a second coming out for me. And I just feel more like whole in myself and grounded, and I guess just to kind of conclude, pride isn't just about who we love, it's about living in our truth even when it's hard, and we come out every time we show up in our authentic selves, and I think that applies to, you know, everyone here celebrating pride. All right, thank you.
Hello. Hello, my name is Brumm. My pronouns are he, they. I am 16 years old, pansexual. I love theater, soccer, and I am homeschooled. I have grown up with several siblings and 3 parents who are openly accepting of me, who I am, regardless of my gender or sexuality. I attended my first Pride parade before I could walk. I know I am lucky to have grown up in a very supportive family, and I'm aware that is not something a lot of people in the LGBTQ plus community have. Growing up, especially, I'm open to any questions asked, and I'll try to answer them to the best of my ability.
All right, good morning, everybody. My name's Rachel Mays. I am a transgender woman. I came out since I was 4. I agree with Angie that it's not just one coming out time or experience or moment. I had 13 different coming out meetings at work in 2019, so it's an ongoing, recurring process. But I came to terms with the fact that I am transgender, not just that I have a feminine side that I needed to express to be healthy. I mean, going back to 4, I remember playing house in daycare, and I wanted to be the mom. And I remember in 7th grade going trick-or-treating as Minnie Mouse. But in those early experiences, it had to be something fantastic or almost comical for me to express myself, and I had to be willing to be laughed at. So that was part of the difficulty for me to come to terms with the fact that I am transgender. And I couldn't come to terms with the fact that I am transgender until I was 34. And I was, you know, in a male-dominated career. I'm an attorney. I'm a prosecutor. I spend time in the courtroom a fair amount, and having relationships that having to navigate questions about the awkward growing my hair out phase. Am I trying to look like Bruce Springsteen? Or like, what am I trying to go for a rock star look? Or the first time I pulled my hair back in a ponytail, having it referred to as a man pony. It was just an expression of who I am and how I feel comfortable existing in our community. And I think that just giving people the space and the love to express themselves how they feel comfortable and confident. You know, everybody has their own set of gender norms, roles, expectations, but nobody knows themselves better than themselves. And just giving them the grace to express themselves, I felt like for 34 years of my life, I was walking around using my non-dominant hand to live my life. And when I was able to express myself and not care about the expectations of others, not care about you know, what will people think, and just like be true to myself and express myself how I felt the most comfortable and confident, I was able to unlock a level of ability that I had never seen before. I've run for public office 2 times. I'm on the board of directors for 5 different nonprofit organizations. I am having a successful professional career. I'm married. I have 3 amazing and precocious little youngsters at home that I am incredibly proud of. But I wouldn't have been able to take on that much. I wouldn't have been able to unleash that capacity if I was still reflecting on what will people think of me, and if I didn't have support of community. Now, I did end up going through a divorce process as a result of coming out, and part of the difficulty there is there's no bad guy. Like, my ex-wife is attracted to men, and I can't give that to her. But it was difficult going through an adversarial process like that without there being someone at fault. But I have remarried. I've been married for 2 years. I love my wife. It's great to have someone who loves me for being me, not despite it. So I can answer questions about my experience coming out, the transgender experience, and being the scapegoat for all the ills of society right now. I can speak to being a parent and a spouse. So if you have questions, I'm open to, my life's an open book.
I feel like you get the least entertaining person as the last one. This panel was absolutely fantastic. You didn't need to add me to this. Hi, everyone. My name's Ahmad Rivera Wagner. I have the distinct pleasure of being the representative for the 90th, which is where we are right now. Just a little bit about me. So I live in Astor with my husband. I married the son of dairy farmers, which is literally how I got to Green Bay. And so they call them boomerangs. When Wisconsin folks go out of Wisconsin and they come back, I am the product of a boomerang relationship. I still go visit the cows in Cross Plains. The best part is the calf part. That's the one. Everything else I'm not ready for. But that is an absolute wonderful part. We live in Astor. We have 2 golden doodles named Appa and Lambo. Lambo, which we call Bo, I think is pretty obvious. Appa is for my favorite cartoon called Avatar: The Last Airbender, for those who know that. It's a very old show that's now getting its resurgence, so it brings bedfellows together that probably would not normally talk to each other. But what you may not know is, I was raised by a single mom who had me at 16. We were homeless for the early part of my life. And two things changed me and kind of shaped my politics. One is a program called Habitat for Humanity. We're perfect strangers that you don't ask who they vote for or how they show up or how they love or they have to look a certain way. Actually built the house with me and my mom that she currently still lives in. And so I think more politics should be just like that, that we ask not who you are, but what can you do? And not who you should vote for, but how do you want to solve a problem? And the second is I helped my mom form a union. She's a home health care worker, and she had not gotten a livable wage for the vast majority of our life. And so one time we were sitting in the kitchen table, and she said, "What do we do?" And I said, "Form a union." And this was in Google's new. And so I Googled how to form a union, and SEIU came up. And 18 months later, she got the largest living wage increase that she had in her life. While all of this was happening, she had this precocious, somewhat annoying little son, which was me, who decided to come out at 18. So here I had a young mom. I was 18. And when I came out, it's just a reminder of how things have changed. You could be fired from your job for showing up dressing differently, being open about who you loved, living or being in a relationship with someone of the same sex or same gender. You could be kicked out of an apartment or denied a loan when I came out. You could not serve in the military openly. And this was the rise of open hate crimes. So we were not celebrating, but recognizing the loss of Matthew Shepard. For those who may not know, was a young man who was beaten to death and tied to a fence and left to die because he was gay in the Midwest. And all of these things there was something called the panic defense, or they often called the sugar defense, which was you could kill, hurt, maim an LGBTQ person and claim that because of their identity, sugar or panic caused you to hurt them. And this was something that actually got people off for killing LGBTQ folks. So I decided that I was going to come out during that time because you just can't tell me what I can do and can't do. And the first actual political campaign that I worked on was marriage equality. So I'm from the East Coast. Everyone told us that we couldn't do it. They said, even Democrats were like, how dare you ask to be treated equally before the law? So here I was with a bunch of gay folks, trans folks, lesbians. We'd go to St. Patrick's Day parades, getting signatures, sometimes chased, sometimes yelled at. And we told folks, we believe that love is worth fighting for. And when you create that opening, that anyone can be part of that work, that love is a centerpiece, we ended up winning an impossible thing. We won marriage equality, the first in the state and the country, when no one else thought we could, because we opened the door to anyone to be a part of it that cared about equality. And so that would be the thing that I say to everyone. Love can win. Love wins when we don't add labels or rules, when we tell people that they can show up how they want, that we've been doing impossible things forever. That coming out at 18, people, allies across the spectrum, got together and said they can't tell us who to be, how to show up, but we can expect our government to work for everybody. And so that is my hope for Pride, is that it's not, and I think you said this so beautifully, it's not only about loving each other, walking through this, but also loving ourselves and being proud of who we are and knowing that we can accomplish anything when we do it together. So I'm open to any questions. I'm a public official, so by law, I'm obligated to answer almost any question that you offer. But I'm just incredibly thankful. The 18-year-old that came out could never imagine sitting in a room like this in Green Bay, Wisconsin, surrounded by people who love, who reflect, who care, who think that we belong. And I'm just thankful to have the honor to represent you, to be here and make that little Ahmad who came out at 18 feel safe and secure. So thank you.
Okay, I'm gonna switch the script a little bit. Usually we do the response later in the service, but it feels to me that this would be the time. Is that all right with y'all? And then the other little change I'm gonna do, if John, where are you, John Doe? Teo, if you don't mind that I grab your singing mic, I'm gonna come to you so that we can leave the lectern open for our speakers. Is that all right? Those of you on Zoom, if you have any questions, feel free to unmute or wave. Y'all ready? You ready for this? Okay. Okay, we are on here. Feel free to wave at me if you've got a question or a response for our speakers. You want to stand up, Claudia?
Sure. Hi, my name is Claudia Motor. My pronouns are she, her. I have a question. I was thinking, well, I watched a TikTok the other day. Sorry, I did. It's a guilty pleasure, but and a woman was describing her experience as sort of she's a masculine presenting lesbian, and she was going into the restroom at the airport, and some woman started yelling, "There's a dude in the," and I thought, I felt so bad for her, and she said, the worst part was that she said it happens like all the time. And I wondered if I had been deluding myself a little bit about, I like to think things have gotten better. I know, like, I went to high school in the 80s. Probably being gay was, like, the worst thing you could be, it was like, oh, I feel so, when I think back to all my, like, gay friends who had to pretend to be straight and everything. But I feel like, so my daughter, I'm a Gen Xer, she's a Gen Zer. I love that Gen Z and the Gen Alpha after that are much better about, like, they don't spend as much time wondering about people's genitalia and what they do with it and that sort of thing, which I think is progress. But I wondered, this is more of a little open question, but I'm curious, and this might not apply to you as much, Brendan, but do you think things have gotten better? That video made me think, like, maybe, I was thinking things are so much better than when I was in high school, but maybe they're not as much better as I want them to be. So I was just curious to see what you guys think. And Angie, I remember correct, when you came out, didn't you live in, like, Montana or something like that? I was going to say, that had to be. That had to be a challenge, like, as much as Texas was.
And if you want to respond, do it from here so they can.
I mean, I'm sure others could jump in as well, but from my experience, I feel it has definitely improved. And that had a lot to do with, like, when I did decide to, be my authentic self and present mask, of course I was, really scary because of the experiences I did have when I first did it. But it has been so different. I have not had a single negative comment. I mean, it's only been, like, that I've been presenting mask for a few months, maybe 6 months, but I haven't had one negative experience. It's been really wonderful. The bathroom experience, I haven't had any issues with that. I still, I guess, look enough like a woman that I don't get that, but I know that I have, many masculine presenting lesbian counterparts that aren't so fortunate, and the whole bathroom thing is just so stupid. You just want to go to the bathroom, but like, I see it happen with my trans son too, because he's not out in school yet. He's young, so he just doesn't use the bathroom at all during the day, which, as a mom, that's a whole nother concerning thing. But yeah, he's gotten a few comments in the bathroom or laughing or whatever, so he just chooses not to go during the day. But yeah, I don't know if anybody else wants that.
So I think progress is 2 steps forward, 1 step back in this area. And I graduated from high school in 2003. I'm a Green Bay resident, grew up here, graduated from Southwest, and I think there were 3 openly gay kids in my high school, and yeah, they got picked on. So from the standpoint of, looking back 20-ish years ago, we're in a better spot than we were back then. But there always is a new scapegoat. And you think back to the 50s and 60s, and we were having discussions about whether white folks could go to the bathroom with colored folks. Then in the 80s and 90s, we were talking about whether straight people could go to the bathroom with, whether straight folks could go to the bathroom with gay folks. And now it's talking about, can cisgender people go to the bathroom with trans folks? And it's the same arguments, and it's the same ideas. And if someone wants to hurt somebody, they're not going to go home and change their clothes and get 2 letters from therapists and doctors to go on hormone replacement therapy for a year so that they can go into the bathroom and take advantage of a situation. Predators are predators, and they come in all shapes and sizes. So this dog whistle of associating other races or ethnicities, other sexual orientations, other gender identities with predators is just a way to manipulate people and to not see each other's humanity. At the end of the day, if you gotta go to the bathroom, you gotta go to the bathroom. And I mean, the parts of Europe and even Green Bay Preble High School has bathrooms that are floor-to-ceiling doors, and the hand washing stations are visible from the hallway. I'm willing to bet that none of you have a gendered bathroom at your homes. A toilet is a toilet. So from the standpoint that are things better or worse, I think that things are better. But when we police each other's bodies, there are masculine presenting women that are going to get harassed. There are effeminate looking males that could get harassed. And there are young kids playing sports that are going to be subject to genital examinations that shouldn't be. Policing each other's bodies has a societal cost. So I think the best way to describe it is 2 steps forward, 1 step back.
Hi, I would love to hear a story, because I could use the inspiration. Sometimes I feel like I'm yelling at a wall, of someone in your life who you thought would never really be there for you, and then finally had that epiphany, and how maybe that worked, and how maybe that's going now.
I'll be quick. All right. My dad, I would say, because like when I first came out, he took it really hard. Like, it was part of the reason I moved out of Montana, a number of other reasons, as I mentioned, but I really didn't think he would be okay with it. I didn't come out to him because I knew he would not be okay with it. My parents are not together, but I told my mom. She was convinced that he would be okay with it, so she told him, but he was not. And he disowned me. He took like all my pictures off the walls. Nobody was allowed to talk about me. I still get a little emotional. It was really difficult. But over time, and it really didn't take that long. It seemed like a really long time, but maybe a couple years he started coming around, and I mean, it was just based in his fear of what people would think of him and his parenting, and like what he did wrong, or, you know, he was always, you know, really great with never, like, I got to do whatever I want as far as like, I was a tomboy, of course. So he, you know, I got to hang out with him and, you know, do what he was doing, and he had no expectations, and he was always, you know, really built me up as a woman and didn't have any expectations of how I should present, and that was really wonderful and refreshing, but I think he felt like that he maybe shouldn't have done that, and that had influenced me being gay, but the uplifting part, he has come around wonderfully. Like, he's, you know, a wonderful ally. He's embarrassed to even think about that there was a time when he was like that. Like, if he were to even hear me say this, he would just be devastated, because, you know, he just loved me so much. I think that he was just worried about me and worried about how he raised me, and thought that he did something wrong. And a lot of it's just like society telling him that that's wrong, so then he must have done something wrong to raise a wrong child, I guess. So, but no, he's amazing now. He's, you know, been very supportive of my relationships. I was previously married, and he, you know, loved my ex-wife like a daughter, still does. And yeah, he's just been really incredibly supportive. Yeah.
I have a similar dad story, but I'm going to try not to cry. So I was raised by a single mom, but ultimately ended up getting to know my father, who was literally physically distant, but you can imagine was also emotionally distant as well. And so I was again, very precocious. I was a very nerdy kid. I was both in the drama club and the captain of the wrestling team. I was in National Honor Society, but then I was with the radical kids that were spiked necklaces. I clearly was in the middle of an identity crisis. And my dad wanted nothing more than for me to play sports. So at first, I refused to play any sports because I was very angry at him because I felt like he had abandoned us. Then I got into high school and come to find out I had some skills both in reading books and playing sports. And it was the first time that my dad was really proud of me, which both was a beautiful thing, but also made me really sad that the only time that my dad was proud of me was when I was crushing other men, which should have told him that I was probably going to be gay. So interesting dynamics. So when I finally came out, I got involved in politics. And so my father was not into politics. He was probably someone who felt like he should never vote, that voting was corrupt and the system was broken, which people can relate to. And I ended up being very visible in the equal rights movement for marriage equality and some other issues around environmentalism and other issues in my community. And I was like, well, we're just gonna have to have this big coming out. So I already came out. I was out to the world, but I wasn't out to my father. My father ended up getting diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, and I didn't know this at the time because he was someone who didn't always communicate his feelings. And so we had this long meeting waiting. He was like, we're gonna get together. We get together, and we have one of the most beautiful conversations I've ever had with my father, where I told him that who I am, what I believe. And the interesting part is I gave him an ultimatum. I said, I'm not going to change how I love and how I show up in the world, but I would like to make sure that you love me anyway. And so I'm going to probably end up crying. So he, said yes. We started talking, and he starts bawling, saying, I can imagine you felt that I never loved you. Then I was a mess. And then my father passed away about a year after that. And one of the most beautiful things about that relationship and why it's so inspiring is by living my life boldly, by being open with who I was, and not necessarily compromising on what that felt like for me. I found an on-ramp for my father to love me, to say that out loud, and create space for me before I was not able to do that ever again. And so to me, that's both this month, this moment, my politics is that you can live out loud, create on-ramps for people to show up where you're at, and miracles can happen.
I'll be real quick. So when I came out publicly, after I'd had any one-on-one conversations that I wanted to have with people, it was probably a week, 2 weeks after my name change hearing, and I posted on Facebook, no, my account has not been hacked. This is me. And I updated my name. And I just let it sit for about 24 hours. And then I posted a much longer post just kind of sharing some of my experiences and just kind of reflecting on, what had led to this point. And between those two posts, I had people show up for me from every phase of my life. Kids that I went to elementary school with at MacArthur and King Elementary Schools, people that I went to college with and worked with at the Jamba Juice on State Street, people I went to law school with and who I had worked in the DA's office up in Superior, and just people from every phase of my life showed up for me, commented, reached out to me by phone or by text message, and all of those little things added up to a surge of support that I had never experienced in my life. So when I talk to people who are struggling with their identity, I always encourage them to take a chance on compassion. And don't let yourself be stifled by what you think others expect from you. Be yourself, be honest to yourself, and let your community show up for you. So when you're connected to one of those people who do express themselves, you don't have to do much, but just letting them know you're there, you care about them, you support them. In the aggregate, it can really be an uplifting moment.
My name is Onyx. I'm fine to go by anything. I'm speaking for not only myself, but one of my friends who I know would love to be here, but is sadly 14 hours away. I myself and they have sometimes struggled with their gender. I've seen them going with their gender they were born as, gender fluid, and trans, and they're still going through it. I myself am agender, so I don't really identify by anything because I just found that easier because that's how I found who I was. But I realize when I look at my life and how they came out, I realize I had it a lot better, and how they were treated, I never really had that problem. So since you guys are older than I will say, because I'm 12, finding the best way to word this, I'm struggling. My heart's pounding right now because I don't normally speak until, I would call this a large crowd for me. I want to know how to be able to sympathize with them and know how they feel, because when I sympathize, I go with experiences I've came from. And since I never had a problem with that, I struggle to sympathize with them.
I think you're already doing a great job. Just listening, just being there for them, because you are just learning. We're all just having experiences, and part of that is just hearing other people's experiences, learning from them. I mean, I'm 49, and I'm still learning from other people, hearing their stories, learning their experiences. Everybody comes from different walks of life, and that's why we need all this community, because we're all just humans fumbling through the world, doing the best we can.
All right, one thing I can really appreciate about your generation, being almost geriatric myself, is that there's this innate ability to see gender and gender expression on a spectrum from hyper-masculine, bearded lumberjack type of presentation, to, hyper ultra-feminine Stepford wife. You've got your extremes. But the thing that your generation really gets is that regardless of where you fall in that spectrum, it's okay. If you are a guy and you want to wear fingernail polish, that's fine. That doesn't mean anything about your character. If you are a girl and you want to have short hair, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. It doesn't say anything about you as a person. And I think where some of the non-binary, more gender fluid type of individuals are comfortable flowing between masculine and feminine presentations, there are still some people who feel comfortable in the pink box or the blue box. And I think that's where you find a lot of the transgender community, is that I identify with a lot of the things that I associate with femininity. So if your friend is gender fluid, or if your friend is transgender, how they see those expectations and where they feel comfortable may be different than your experience and your support that you've experienced. And you may just be more comfortable saying, today I want to, go roll around in some dirt and, light off some firecrackers. And there are some days where you want to wear a pretty dress and go to a tea party. And that's perfectly fine. But listening, like Angie said, listening and being there and being supportive how you can make all the difference. Try to understand where they're coming from, and just let them know that they've got a sympathetic ear, they've got a shoulder to cry on when they need to, and if they want to, roll in the mud and light off some firecrackers, that's okay too. Like, just let them know that you're there for them.
I think we'll wrap it there for time's sake. I know there are more, but for time. Oh, I'm sorry. Did you want to talk?
I was just going to follow up with what
Go.
Yes, my very, very oh so wise age. Yeah, I'm just going to follow up what they said. Just be there. You don't necessarily have to understand exactly what they're going through. Just being there for them to tell you and allowing them to tell you how their experiences have been. Maybe get a better understanding of what they're going through, which might help in some way.